Good evening, Philippines, and good day, world. It's Monday, December 18, 2023, and you're watching Newsline World. I'm Fatima Nawzil. We will bring you the top stories we've gathered from all over the globe. First, President Bongbong Marcos urged for a swift and inclusive clean energy transition during the AZEC leaders meeting in Tokyo, Japan. North Korea unleashes its most advanced missile during a test fire, accusing the United States of conducting war moves in the region. The Israeli military claims to have discovered the biggest Hamas tunnel in Gaza. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the creation of a military district in response to Finland's move to join NATO. And India is set to embark on its very first winter expedition to the Arctic. These and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. The Israeli military claims to have exposed the largest tunnel built by Hamas in Gaza, a tunnel that stretches over 4 kilometers and a key travel route to Israel. Carlo de la Peña has the details.
The Israel Defense Forces uncovered an extensive tunnel system in Gaza Strip, located just a few hundred meters from a vital border crossing. Reports said the tunnel was so huge that small vehicles could easily travel inside of it. The Israeli army believes that the tunnel cost $1 million and took years to construct. The extensive tunnel project was helmed by Mohammed Yahya, the brother of Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar, whom the IDF calls the butcher of Khan Yunis and the mastermind of the October 7 attack. According to Israeli chief military spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, the tunnel spans 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles, enough to reach the northern Gaza city, an area that was once the heart of Hamas governance. While the IDF said none of the branches entered Israeli territory, one of the shafts of the tunnel was found 400 meters from the Erez crossing. Hagari said that thousands of Palestinians were going from the Erez crossing inside Israel. According to the IDF, over the last few weeks, the Combat Engineering Corps' Elite Yahalom Unit and the Gaza Division's Northern Brigade used advanced intelligence and technological means to uncover the tunnel network, scan it, and clear it of any possible threats. The huge tunnel also has several branches and junctions and has communication lines, plumbing, and electricity. Some parts of the tunnel also have blast doors, which the IDF claims were intended to prevent Israeli soldiers from entering. Meanwhile, the IDF said they also raided the offices of the commander of Hamas Khan Yunis battalion and the vacation homes of several senior Hamas commanders, including Yahya Sinwar's. Reporting, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, one of our fellow Filipinos who was taken captive by the terrorist group Hamas has returned safely to the Philippines. MJ Mondihar reports.
A warm welcome awaited Jeremy Pacheco, an overseas Filipino worker in Israel, upon his return to the Philippines. The plane carrying Pacheco landed at NAIA Terminal 1 at 10:21 in the morning. Israeli ambassador to the Philippines, Ilan Floss, personally greeted him, along with officials from Overseas Workers Administration and the Department of Migrant Workers. Pacheco was held captive by the terrorist group Hamas during their surprise attack in Israel on October 7. He shared that as OFWs, they're accustomed to explosions in Israel, but the surprise attack launched by Hamas was different.
Bandang alas 7:30, mga ganon, sumilip ako sa bintana. May nakapasok ng terorista sa labas ng kibbutz namin sa fence. So, sinabi ko doon sa alaga ko na may nakapasok na, iba na to kako sa kanya.
Pacheco worked as a caregiver in Israel, and he was with his elderly charges when Hamas abducted him. His employers, however, were killed by Hamas operatives.
Yun, pinatay siya sa shelter na natutulog. Bandang alas 8, 8:30 na yun eh. Pinaputol siya ng 3 beses. Then, yung dalawa tumama sa hita ko tsaka dito ko sa ano ko. Pero please lang awa ng Diyos.
Pacheco didn't narrate the full extent of his grim experience in the hands of Hamas. He spent over a month in captivity but was freed eventually, along with other foreign nationals on November 24. The Philippine government assured livelihood and financial assistance to Pacheco and his family.
Upon his return, we will mobilize further our resources in terms of pangkabuhayan. Ito ang isang pinoint out ni Pangulo nung nagpulong kami. Yung pangmatagalang tulong, pangkabuhayan at empleyo para sa pamilya ni Jimmy.
Meanwhile, the Israeli government will provide lifetime social security benefits and regular stipends to the Pacheco family, similar to the aid given to those affected by the Israel-Hamas war.
They will get more assistance from the Israeli government, and this is by Israeli law, and they get exactly the same as any other Israeli victim of terrorism. This is an obligation of the Israeli government.
Nevertheless, Pacheco still plans to return to Israel for work. He also expressed gratitude to the government for being back in the Philippines for Christmas, so he could spend time with his wife and 3 children.
Sa Paskong to, masayang masaya. Ito yung unang Pasko na mangyayari sa amin na magsama-sama since na nag-OFW po ako. Kaya maraming salamat sa inyo po.
With that, the Philippine government works hand-in-hand with the Israeli government for the betterment of the remaining Filipinos in Israel. For Government of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SB9 News.
Meanwhile, China urged Saudi Arabia and Iran to enhance bilateral cooperation and reject interference from external forces attempting to stir tensions in their bilateral relations. Senior officials from Saudi and Iran met recently in Beijing nearly a year after China brokered talks for the former rivals to reconcile. Melchizedek Cadiz has news.
It has been 9 months since Iran and Saudi Arabia agreed to normalize relations and end years of dispute in an official meeting mediated by China on March 10, 2023. Wang Yi, member of the Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, recently met with the deputy foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia and China in Beijing. Wang gave the former rivals 3 suggestions to enhance their bilateral ties. First thing is to enhance mutual trust through dialogue and consultation. Second is to expand personnel exchanges in various sectors. And the third is for both countries to reject external interference. Wang reaffirmed China's support for Arab and Muslim countries, as well as the legitimate rights of the Palestinians. It was the first time that the 3 countries held a trilateral joint committee 9 months since Saudi Arabia and Beijing have reconciled. Regular flights between Iran and Saudi Arabia are also being considered to mark an improvement in bilateral ties. Reporting this has been Melchizedek Cadiz, SB9 News, Kuwait.
5 Nordic countries pledged to support Ukraine's fight with Russia for as long as it takes. The pledge came at a time when the Biden administration's request to grant more funding for Ukraine faced serious delay and division in the U.S. Congress. Kirbyl Trinidad has a story.
Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland and Iceland have provided Ukraine with a combined aid of at least 11 billion euros since the Russian invasion broke out on February 24, 2022. 22 months into the war, the 5 Nordic nations promised Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to support his country for as long as it takes during recent talks with leaders from Northern Europe and Norway. Zelensky thanked his allies for their continued support as he addressed the parliament in the Norwegian capital of Oslo. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen also pledged a separate support package worth 1 billion euros for Ukraine last week. Norway also vowed to secure 75 billion kroner worth of aid for Ukraine and its neighboring countries affected by the war, which will be distributed in 5 years until 2027. Moreover, Zelensky made an emotional plea for the U.S. Congress to approve more funding for Ukraine during a 2-day state visit to Washington last week. Speaking from the White House, U.S. President Joe Biden warned of direct consequences for Kyiv as Republican lawmakers in the U.S. Senate blocked $110 billion in military aid for Ukraine and Israel. Republicans said that they will not support the military funding for Ukraine unless big changes will be made to the government's border policy, a subject that American lawmakers have been debating for years. With the request for funding still in limbo, Senate lawmakers already went into recess on December 15 for the holidays and will not convene until January 3, 2024 to mark the first session of the year. This has been Kerbil Trinidad, SMNI News.
Russia's Putin said his country does not plan to attack NATO and that the bloc is also well aware that Moscow has zero plans to attack them. Jane Condita reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin dismissed claims that his country could attack a NATO member nation in the future. For Putin, such a move is complete nonsense and that a conflict would run counter to Russian interests. Putin made the statement in an interview with a Russian state television on Sunday, weeks after U.S. President Joe Biden claimed that Putin might attack a NATO ally if he achieved victory in Ukraine, sparking a third world war. The Russian president added that his American counterpart may be trying to stoke such fears to justify what Putin calls as Biden's erroneous policy in the region. Putin dismissed Biden's speculation as nonsense, saying, quote, "It is complete nonsense, and I think President Biden understands that. I think that President Biden understands that this is just a figure of speech to justify his misguided Russian policy. Russia has no reason, no interest, no geopolitical interest, neither economic, political, nor military, to fight with NATO countries." But Putin noted that the political course of the West is making this increasingly difficult. Putin also said that Russia has no argument with other NATO member states as well, accusing them of artificially creating problems with Russia because they do not want Russia as a rival. Meanwhile, Putin cited Finland as an example, a country that recently applied to join NATO after the start of the Ukraine conflict and became a full-fledged member in April. Putin said that Russia has no disputes with Finland and that the last territorial disputes were settled at the end of World War II. And in response to Finland joining NATO, Putin announced that Russia will create a brand new Leningrad Military District to reinforce its positions near Finland. The new force will be stationed in the Leningrad region in the northwestern part of Russia, where St. Petersburg, a city previously known as Leningrad during the Soviet Union era, is located. He further went on and said, quote, "We had the most open-hearted, cordial relations. We had no problems. But now we are going to, because we are going to create the Leningrad Military District and deploy certain military units there. Why did they need that?" End of quote. To recall, last week, Finland announced the signing of a defense cooperation agreement with the United States. The DCA will allow the U.S. to station troops and military equipment to Finland. Finland will also open 15 zones in which the U.S. will be provided with unimpeded use and access to it. Reporting, this has been Jane Conita, SMNI News.
Heavy rain and fierce winds caused by a powerful storm killed at least 14 people in Argentina and injured 14 others over the weekend. Francine Sagarino tells us more.
Hundreds of people have been evacuated and more than 100,000 homes were left without electricity after a violent storm knocked down power lines and blocked roads in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Within the halls of Hipódromo Argentino de Palermo, an important horse racing course in Buenos Aires, shards of glass were seen flying everywhere as the strong wind broke the windows. In the city of Bahia Blanca, shoppers panicked after the storm knocked out power and removed parts of a roof inside a wholesale store. The storm that brought winds up to 150 kilometers per hour on Saturday was strong enough to knock down trees, tore off roofs, and caused nearly zero visibility in some areas. Even the heavy aircraft owned by Aerolíneas Argentinas was not exempted from nature's fury after the strong wind moved the plane at an international airport in Buenos Aires and caused major damages. The severe weather also triggered flash floods in the nearby city of La Plata. The violent storm also killed 2 people in neighboring Uruguay. Reporting, this has been Francine Segrino, SMNI News.
Local mayors in Australia asked for military intervention after the onslaught of former tropical cyclone Jasper exhausted emergency services and limited their access to remote areas. Davis Juarez reports.
Former tropical cyclone Jasper may have weakened from a Category 2 system into a tropical storm when it entered Queensland last week. Despite this, the weakened system continued to wreak havoc in far north Queensland.
Local authorities have issued flood emergency warnings across far north Queensland. Residents have been evacuated as rising floodwaters slowly drowned homes. 5 days of torrential rain was enough to turn roads into rivers. At least 10,000 households were knocked out of power as of Sunday afternoon. Cairns, a city in tropical far north Queensland, witnessed its worst flooding in more than 100 years, with records that have even exceeded the flooding in 1977. Local mayors plead for military assistance before clean water runs out as the rising floods and blocked roads prevented them from reaching out to residents living in remote areas. Cairns Airport has been closed for a second time in the week after some planes have gone underwater.
Weather models suggest there is a possibility the former tropical cyclone could regain some power and could develop into a tropical cyclone again this week. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Devi Suarez, SMNI News, Australia.
Japan and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations agreed to strengthen decades-old friendship and cooperation in the wake of changing geopolitical landscape. Natsumi Kojima will give us the details.
The ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit ended in Tokyo on Monday with a stronger commitment to deepen partnership in various sectors including economy and security. ASEAN and Japanese leaders adopted a joint vision that emphasized security and economic cooperation during a special summit held on Sunday. The summit marks the 50th anniversary of official diplomatic ties between Japan and the 10-member ASEAN bloc. What started as talks over Japanese synthetic rubber exports in 1973 turned into a decades-old partnership that withstood the test of time. In a joint statement, the leaders called for stronger partnership and the commitment to work together for peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, especially in maritime security, the respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the settlement of differences without mentioning China. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said Japan will take measures to mobilize more than $35 billion in public and private funds to facilitate investment in ASEAN over the next 5 years. Japanese and ASEAN leaders also adopted a plan to implement 130 projects as Japan signed tons of bilateral deals with Southeast Asian leaders. Ijo Nihon kara Kojima Natsumi News Otsutai shimashita. SMNI News, Japan.
North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, fired a short-range ballistic missile into its eastern sea, drawing condemnation from its neighbors. According to the Japan Coast Guard, approximately 20 minutes after the initial report of a launch, the missile fell outside the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, of Japan. Japanese Parliamentary Vice Minister of Defense Shingo Miyake said the ICBM missile has the potential to travel more than 15,000 kilometers or 9,300 miles, meaning it could reach anywhere in Japan and the U.S. mainland. North Korea took this action following the arrival of a USS Missouri, a nuclear-powered submarine in South Korea, which Pyongyang deemed as war moves by the United States. Pyongyang also warned that if Washington attempts to end the year by showcasing nuclear war or any use of nuclear weapons, Pyongyang will face and respond to it. The launch came following the U.S. and South Korea's second session of a nuclear consultative group in Washington held last Friday, where the two nations discussed nuclear deterrence in case of a conflict with North Korea. The Philippines stands in solidarity with ASEAN and Japan in condemning North Korea's ballistic missile launch, according to President Bongbong Marcos. Val Divina Gracia has details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. joined Japan and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, in condemning North Korea's reported firing of an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan. The statement was made before his speech at the Asia Zero Emission Community, or AZEC, leaders meeting at the Prime Minister's office in Tokyo, part of the 50th commemorative ASEAN-Japan Friendship and Cooperation Summit. Marcos highlighted that while discussing regional economic progress, he envisions a peaceful and resilient Indo-Pacific region. President Marcos emphasized that such dangerous and provocative actions by the DPRK pose a threat and destabilize the region and the world. According to the Japan Coast Guard report, North Korea recently launched a long-range ballistic missile that reportedly fell into the sea west of Hokkaido. Meanwhile, President Marcos called for a swift and inclusive transition to clean energy. The call was made during his participation in the Asia Zero Emission Community, or AZEC, leaders meeting in Tokyo. At the summit, President Marcos Jr. seized the opportunity to invite AZEC partners to invest in the Philippines' renewable and emerging technologies. Marcos also underscored the importance of collaboration in achieving the goals of AZEC and the Paris Agreement. The AZEC summit, held concurrently with the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit, serves as a framework for cooperation among different countries striving for decarbonization and economic growth in Asia. The summit concluded with a joint statement emphasizing the need for bio-derived biomass power generation and the use of small modular reactors, considered safer than conventional nuclear power plants. This effort aims to increase energy resources, particularly amid tensions in Ukraine and the Middle East. For God, my beloved country, the Philippines, this is Valdivine Gracia. SMNI News.
The Philippines is addressing exploration issues in the West Philippine Sea to meet the country's energy needs, as said by President Bongbong Marcos. Crislin Catarong reports.
The Philippines is working to resolve issues in the West Philippine Sea to initiate new energy exploration projects before the supply of the Malampaya gas field runs out. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. made this announcement in an interview with Japanese media when he was asked about the current issues in the maritime region and the Malampaya gas field. Marcos added that the deadlock in the WPS continues to hinder energy explorations in the Philippines. Meanwhile, PBBM stated that it is crystal clear that the West Philippine Sea is within the exclusive economic zone or maritime territory of the Philippines. The president mentioned that the country has been in negotiations for over 3 years, but there has been minimal development in the discussions regarding the contested territory. In the same interview, PBBM also noted that the supply of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is becoming increasingly crucial for the Philippines, especially in its transition to renewable energy. However, Marcos acknowledged that the transition to renewables is not as straightforward as expected. A transition period is needed to develop infrastructure and allow technologies to advance. According to the president, some of the new technologies are still under examination, requiring the Philippines to wait for them to be launched on a commercial basis. He emphasized that the Philippines would invest a considerable amount of time in transitioning towards clean energy, as it needs to secure an adequate gasoline supply, especially with all the plans that his administration has for economic growth. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Crislin Catarong, SMNI News.
Japan and Indonesia have also agreed to eliminate more trade barriers to enhance their bilateral economic agreements. Indonesia's foreign minister announced that his country and Japan have reached an agreement to remove additional trade barriers after concluding negotiations on terms to improve their bilateral economic agreements. Minister Retno Marsudi said that Japan will allow access to Indonesian products. This includes the removal of tariffs on processed fishery items, and both countries will enhance relations in the banking sector. The two nations are also reviewing the amended Indonesia-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, which is set to be implemented in the first quarter of 2024. However, formal signing and ratification by their respective parliaments are still required after legal reviews. Retno made this statement after Indonesian President Joko Widodo held a bilateral meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on the sidelines of a Tokyo summit, marking 50 years of Japan's relations with ASEAN. A highlight of their meeting was the importance of the agreement between Jakarta and Tokyo on critical minerals as Indonesia strives to position itself as a crucial member of the global electric vehicle battery supply chain. Indonesia successfully secured Japan's support for at least 24 projects that will help the Southeast Asian country in its ambitious transition to renewable energy. Anissa de Guzman has news.
The first ever Asia Zero Emission Community resulted in the signing of dozens of cooperation projects between Japan and Pacific nations in Tokyo. Indonesia and Japan co-hosted the event. Its community members consist of Australia, the Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. The summit serves as an avenue for community members to cooperate in achieving net zero emissions in Asia and its surrounding areas. The meeting produced a joint statement that contained the commitment of its member countries to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, such as keeping global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Of the 69 cooperation agreements on energy transition that were discussed, 24 will be worked on together by Indonesia and Japan. Indonesia and Japan also agreed to remove more trade barriers and improve relations in the banking sector. Reporting for Newsline World, Anissa de Guzman, SMNI News.
ASEAN Secretary-General Dr. Kau Kim Horn had a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Thailand, Dr. Panpri Bahida Nukara. The meeting took place on the sidelines of a commemorative summit for the 50th ASEAN-Japan Friendship and Cooperation in Tokyo, Japan. The Secretary-General congratulated Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister on his recent appointment, highlighting Thailand's significant contributions in leading ASEAN's efforts to advance partnerships for sustainability. He also acknowledged Thailand's commitment to effectively implementing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. During the discussion, the parties addressed steps to maintain Thailand's industrial competitiveness, particularly as a major manufacturing base for Japanese automakers producing next-generation cars like electric vehicles. Both sides also discussed the initiatives of ASEAN, including ways to promote ASEAN community building and achieve the goals outlined in the ASEAN Community Vision 2025, among other topics. Meanwhile, a promotional event hosted by the Tourism Authority of Thailand attracted hundreds of tourism industry professionals in China. Chatmongkol Pisumay Gosan has the news.
More than 300 tourism industry professionals from both Thailand and China attended the promotional event in Shanghai to endorse Thai products in the Chinese market.
The initiative aims to help Thai tourism operators showcase their products to attract more Chinese visitors to Thailand. Representatives from Thai airlines, hotels, and travel agencies had the opportunity to promote new goods and services designed for the Chinese market. To recall, Thailand approved a temporary visa waiver for visitors from China and Kazakhstan to allow them to access the Southeast Asian nation visa-free until February 2024. Thailand plans to lure 3.5 million Chinese tourists in the country this year and attract another 8 million in 2024. Up to 28 million foreigners are expected to visit Thailand by the end of 2023.
Thai exports to China has increased significantly in the past 26 years. China, for its part, exported $69.6 billion worth of goods to Thailand in 2021 alone. รายงานจากกรุงเทพมหานคร นายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMNS ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
The United Arab Emirates declared a three-day mourning period as the nation expressed its sympathies following the death of the Emir of Kuwait. Upon the order of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates, all flags have been flown at half-mast for 3 days since Saturday. All flags have been flown at half-mast at all government departments within the country, as well as the UAE's embassies and diplomatic missions abroad. Emiratis also offered funeral prayers after doing their noon prayers in all mosques across the UAE on Sunday. Artists in the UAE also draw a portrait of Sheikh Nawaf in the desert in honor of the late Emir. The Kuwaiti Royal Court confirmed news of the death of the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Sabah, on Saturday. The 86-year-old ruler died after getting in and out of hospital several times this year. Sheikh Nawaf ruled Kuwait for 6 decades until his death on Saturday. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made an effort to travel to Kuwait to offer his condolences in person. Sheikh Nawaf's half-brother, 83-year-old Sheikh Mashal Al-Ahmad Al-Habir, will replace him as Emir of Kuwait. At 83, Sheikh Mashal is believed to be the world's oldest crown prince. A car collided with one of the SUVs in U.S. President Joe Biden's motorcade as he was leaving his campaign headquarters in Delaware. The details with Ruth Hamilton.
Mr. President, why are you losing to Trump in the polls?
U.S. President Joe Biden was outside the building, getting ready to go inside his car when a loud bang was heard. A video that went viral online showed Biden looking visibly startled by the incident. Biden was seen looking towards the source of the sound to see the commotion before being swiftly escorted into his vehicle by the U.S. Secret Service personnel. Reports citing the White House press pool said that a sedan with Delaware license plates hit an SUV shielding the U.S. president's motorcade at the intersection across from the entrance of the campaign headquarters amid rainy weather in Wilmington. The impacted SUV was not Biden's, and they had returned safely to their home in Wilmington after the incident. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were visiting the 2024 campaign headquarters to share a meal with the staffers. This is the first time that Biden made a visit since staffers started working out of the Wilmington office over the summer. This is Ruth Hamilton, SMNI News.
India has launched its winter expedition to the Arctic, a move that will likely give a major boost to the country's research about biodiversity and global climate. Andrea Santos has details.
India has marked a historic venture by launching its very first winter expedition to the Arctic. In a bid to maintain its year-long presence at the Himadri Research Station in Svalbard, Norway, Earth Sciences Minister Kiren Rijiju has flagged off the country's first winter science expedition to the region, aiming to explore the Arctic's influence on sea levels, global climate, and biodiversity. India will send a team of 4 scientists. They will embark on a journey on Tuesday to the Indian Research Station in Ny-Ålesund town on the Brugger Peninsula. Ny-Ålesund is the northernmost settlement in the world. It is situated 79 degrees north latitude in Spitsbergen region of Svalbard. Reporting, this has been Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
SMNR recently received the Hall of Fame Award at the Golden Globe Annual Awards held in Manila Hotel. Jason Rubrico tells us more.
Sunshine Media Network International, or SMNI News, continues to receive accolades as the year 2023 comes to an end. SMNI was awarded the Best Integrated Broadcasting and Media Company at the Golden Globe Annual Awards for Business Excellence, held at the Manila Hotel on Friday night. SMNI also received the Hall of Fame Award, the highest recognition among the trusted brands in the Philippines that has been recognized for 3 consecutive years by the said award-giving body.
Well, yung inyong parangal, beforehand,
ay kayo ay naamin ng nasubaybayan at kayo ay sumuporta sa amin. Hindi po ba? At yung aking respeto sa ating pamunuan at sa ating serbisyo, nandoon na yun, natukoy na namin. Meron sa SMNI, siguro the divine intervention by doing all your works. There's always a good point on doing things and doing good for the love of country and for the love of God. Maraming salamat sa inyong suporta sa pamunuan at sa mga kawani ng ating TV station. Maraming salamat po. Congratulations.
In 2022, Pastor Apollo C. Quibloy was recognized at the Golden Globe Annual Awards for Outstanding Filipino Achiever, where he was given the Medal of Distinction. For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, AZEC News.
And before we end, may be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. The more you imbibe the Word of God in your life, the more you acquire riches in heaven. And for a Christmas countdown, it's only 6 days to go before Christmas. And that's all for tonight's edition. For more updates, you may visit smninewschannel.com or follow us on official social media accounts on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for watching, and we thank our beloved Pastor Apollo C. Quibloy, for the opportunity to be a part of this program. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Fatima Nawzil, and this is Newsline World.